Two of Europe's most innovative political leaders discuss technology's vital role in keeping us connected. In conversation with Ryan Heath from Politico is European Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education and Youth, Mariya GABRIEL, and the Prime Minister of Luxembourg, Xavier BETTEL.
Prime Minister, Commissioner, thank you so much for joining us. I thought maybe we'll start with a couple of questions on innovation and then get into more of the questions about jobs and skills and everything else we're doing to cope with COVID. Maybe I'll turn to you first, Prime Minister. What are some of the bottom-up ideas that the people and the government of Luxembourg have been embracing? What innovations are you using to get through the pandemic?
It's a package. I don't know how long I'm able to speak, but the first thing is there are things you do by law. As you can understand, as Liberal Prime Minister, I'm against to regulate everything because it's also personal responsibility. And we really insist during some holidays and even this week and in the next weeks that everybody's own responsibility and behavior has a huge impact on the COVID crisis. So the COVID doesn't travel, so the COVID people travels, and people contact with each other makes it possible that the COVID is traveling. So what we realized is with the digital generations that we are today, that we were able to keep contacts first thing. So I was not able to see my friends, but I was able to chat with my friends. I was even to see my friends, even if it was just through video. E-learning was enormous, and without the infrastructure and without the e-learning, it wouldn't have been possible to keep, especially children, in a scholar procedure where they need to be taught. And then e-health, where we were also able to exchange a lot of topics, but not only nationally, but also internationally. So bottom line to tell you, I was more reluctant, for example, on the apps, to be all these COVID apps, but we will be able to speak later about that. But for me, it was important to have the possibility to keep through the digital things, the connectivity, but on the other hand, to see that even with the connectivity, people are still people, and without the personal contacts, we wouldn't have it. And this was out of the screen when young guys decided to help the neighbor, which is an old lady, an old man, to go to the grocery shop for them. So, as I always said, digital is very important, but will never replace persons, and especially also in COVID times.
Very smart thinking. Now, Commissioner, you have science as the core of your portfolio, and we know the EU just has an incredibly important role in making sure that the EU is up there in the global rankings on research and innovation. But I guess one of the things that we didn't know until recently is just the huge effect of misinformation and people organizing campaigns against trusting science. And I was wondering, what are the EU's efforts to make sure that the people of Europe actually still trust in the science that underlies all of this innovation? And, you know, what are you doing to make sure that people are going to be there to trust a vaccine when it's ready?
Well, I would like to start by saying that the last months, what we have seen, that was on one side an increase of disinformation, but at the same time an increase and more trust in science. That means that we need really to action and to act on different levels, and there is no silver bullet. On one side, for me, what is important is really to capitalize already on our investments thanks to the Horizon 2020 program, because, for example, we have supported more than 160 beneficiaries with 44 million euros. And here we have a very important project, the project SOMA, Social Observatory for Disinformation and Social Media Analysis. Now we need really to have access to data. We need to establish networks where researchers can work on this data in order to identify as soon as possible threats, tendencies, and to provide us solutions. That means that second point, we need more targeted information campaign. The question here is not just to say that the virus is not existing, but what are the reasons for these beliefs? That means that we should continue to use our expertise. And final point, I fully believe of the key role of education. That's why I'm so glad that in our Digital Education Action Plan, we would like to create a high-level expert expert group on disinformation, where the education community can elaborate common materials, common softwares in order really to tackle this, because it's in our schools that critical thinking, all these necessary tools at the disposals of our children can be done in order really to allow them to make their own choices. Our red lines, it's always freedom of expression, free access to information, but we need here to strengthen our role, and education is playing the main. One last thing, we have eTwinning platform. That's the largest platform, where we have more than 550,000 schools with more than 800,000 teachers working together. And every year they are choosing a team in order to join their efforts and to work together. Next year, 2021, that will be tackling disinformation, and I very much count on their support.
Sounds like a very smart move. Prime Minister, if I could ask what that sort of work looks like in practice in Luxembourg. I know it's different from country to country, but with millions of Europeans not sure whether they should take a vaccine or maybe even against it, what sort of communication will you be planning in Luxembourg to make sure that the vaccine is a success when it arrives?
The first thing is I want to say hello to Mariya, because through this digital world, I'm able to greet my friend. And so that's great. And hello to you too, and all the people watching us. Different things. The first thing is we have to show as Europe that Europe is a bonus. I have to admit, during the first wave, we didn't give the best example. When we were running to get materials and sometimes buying materials from other countries on the tarmac next to the planes, we saw that in the first wave. And I think this is the moment of truth now with the vaccines, where we will be able to show why Europe is good. Because if every country would have a race against each other to buy the vaccines, this would be a nightmare. So I think the first fact, sorry not to speak digital, but the first fact to buy commonly and to distribute commonly on the same moments in 27 countries, I think this is an important point where Europe is proving that we are stronger when we act together, first thing. The second thing is, to get vaccines is one thing, but to get people vaccinated is another thing. And I don't know which one is the most difficult for the moment. So when I hear some people telling me that, yeah, with the vaccines, I hear that there will be a chip from my government to know what you are doing, and this will, and people will die, and it's everything was produced by a pharmacy company, so now they have the vaccine since years, and they're just waiting the prices to get them higher. So it's crazy what you can hear. So the first thing will be to have now, not to wait that the vaccine is there, to start now already the campaign, why is the vaccine good? And to ask specialists, doctors, no, not to believe what is in social medias. And I think also we have to be more present very often as European body, as Commission, in the social medias. Very often there are more fake news than official news from the European Union. And when we do something, it's always 20 seconds where we see a lot of pictures. But I think that now we should have, firstly, a campaign from specialists, but also to have ambassadors. You know, in every country, we have some famous persons from sport, from culture, from music. When they say, I get the vaccine because I know that this is part of the solution and I want to be a part of the solution, this could help. But the fact to inform and to be clear, but the problem will be, as soon as we will start the vaccine, I'm sure that some people will die, even with the vaccine. And then the campaign will start again to reassure persons to get vaccinated. And when we had the European Council where we discussed about the vaccines, and we realized that it's about 40 to 60% in nearly all the countries. There is no one country over 60% where people want to get vaccinated. So, and we know that we need more than 60% to be efficient. So we need to do that in common. People don't want to see me in Bulgaria or in Romania, but I'm sure that in Bulgaria, if Mariya is saying something, I'm in my country doing things with people in the country who are known, but especially specialists who can reassure, because, you know, we are politicians. So as soon as we say something as politicians, people say, yeah, these are politicians, so we don't trust them. But if other persons who has no link to politics, so ambassadors for vaccination, this could help too. But to inform and to to really show that if we want to, I had a press conference where I said, we need to give up sometimes some freedom to get more freedom. And for the vaccine, I don't want to make it mandatory. There was a discussion also in Luxembourg if I should do it mandatory. It's a personal choice, but not to get vaccinated is keeping a responsibility of not being able to end the coronavirus. So everybody has to know it, but has to take the decision by himself. I want to do it mandatory. I'm against that because I think vaccine is an own responsibility, but we need to convince persons. And the work starts now. We cannot wait December, then the first vaccine will come. And we need a strategy. Who will be first? And this is also a big topic where the European Union wants to give us advisors, but in Luxembourg, for example, I asked the ethic committee to give me, because it's for me an ethical question, should I start with the most vulnerable? Should I start with the staff in the hospital? Should I start with young people? So all these questions need to get an answer, but we need to trust. And the problem is, for the moment, there is more misinformation than true information.
Now, maybe let's switch more to the digital topics now. Thinking of startups, I'll turn to you first, Commissioner. We know startups are often highly innovative, and that can mean a high rate of new jobs. But what are the unmet needs that startups are beginning to meet? And what is realistic on that job front? Is it startups that will deliver these new jobs, or do we need to really look towards things like the European Green Deal and industrial policy to make sure that jobs are being looked after in Europe?
Well, I see the role of our startups everywhere, but of course we really need to offer them at least mechanism, tools, access to funding where they can rapidly develop their ideas. And we have it now with the European Innovation Council. What we have seen during the last few months, that we are able to provide to our SMEs and our startups this access to funding. And I'm very, very proud of this because, you know, our ambition is to transform the European Innovation Council in a European unicorns factory. For the first time, we decided to invest directly with equity investment. And my intention here is to build synergies, because it's one thing to develop European Innovation Council with 70% for SMEs of the budget, and I hope that the budget will stay 9-10 billion, but we need to build synergies with the European Innovation and Technology Institute, because here we have decentralized approach. We have something very unique, the community between education, private sector and public institutions. We need to build synergies with partnerships and missions in Horizon Europe, and we need to build ecosystems. So my main challenge here is how to offer to all our startups everywhere in Europe access to funding and perspective to see that Europe is their home. That means that we need to address the local and regional dimension. We need synergies with other funding instruments like the European Regional Development Fund or the European Social Fund, and we need really to support them at this critical moment when they need us. And I would like just to tell them thank you, because during our hackathon, during the last months when we're tackling this crisis, they have shown extraordinary creativity and innovation capacity.
Prime Minister, what about you? I know that you have a big focus on startups in Luxembourg, and we've seen COVID accelerate so many economic trends. Are there particular skills that you are trying to make sure that your young people are adopting so they can participate in these startups, so that they can be ready for the post-COVID economy?
I think that the COVID showed us that the digital reality, I have to admit, I shouldn't be proud of that, but before the COVID, WebEx was something I never used. Now it's my daily life to be on Zoom, on WebEx, on all these friends. I don't know all the names of all these things where you can chat together. So I think there are huge opportunities to have. The fact is that through the COVID, we had some startups created in Luxembourg, but the fact is we didn't wait for the COVID to support startups in Luxembourg. So we had special help for startups, especially in COVID times, because we know that the startups needs money. And to get fresh money for the moment from other companies or from investors is very difficult, because people have other things in mind than to invest in startups. So we supported to help of startups through government grants, also to help support credits to be able to do. I know that not all of them will be success stories, but I prefer to invest, in trampolines for people jumping higher instead of couches to rest and to sleep and to wait that thing is passing. So we invest in people and we invest in startups for the moment. Even if I know that I've been criticized, for example, and especially by digital community, not to have this COVID app in Luxembourg, but this was a political reason where I still believe that it's gives a wrong impression. I don't want to start a discussion now with Mariya, as former digital commissioner, about how important this digital app is. But the fact is, the COVID app, just to tell you, we have analog tracing. So that means that we contact everyone, and this is the best way to know with whom you had contact, and especially if you had the mask or not, because the app will just tell me that I was in contact with someone, but I don't know whom, when, how long. And if, for example, I living in a flat and my bed is next to the next flat's apartment and it's less than 2 meters, so I will have an alert every day that I'm sick if my neighbor is positive and there was no contact at all. So we do analog tracing, which is difficult because we need to contact persons, but we don't digital is not everything. So we shouldn't think that, if you have an app, everything will be clear and better. We still believe that in some cases, especially where you need to exchange and to learn from persons, that sometimes humans are, without humans, it wouldn't work. So this was a political decisions where even I had the backup from the parliament and also from government, because if you want to be useful, it has to be centralized. It has to be centralized, and I don't want that.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner, if I could follow up on the skills question, the EU has for a long time identified digital skills gaps and said that young people and workers already in the workforce need to be adapting to what the economy is changing into. Has COVID changed the way you approach that? Does it mean intensifying those efforts? Has it made you see the issue in a new light?
Absolutely. 95% of the respondents of our public consultation for the Digital Education Action Plan were said that the COVID-19 is a turning point for the digital education. So I'm very glad that now during the crisis, we have seen on one side what are our strengths and but what are our weaknesses. That means that before arriving to continue to work on digital skills and competencies, and that means both basic and advanced, we need to address some of the main challenges linked to connectivity, especially in rural and remote areas, linked to equipment. We have young people without tablets, without laptops. And in the Digital Education Action Plan, that's why we are talking about the high performance digital education ecosystem. But second, yes, definitely we need to invest more in digital skills, because we have seen that half of our teachers don't have enough the skills with new technologies. Half of our children, especially children in vulnerable position. So that means that we should now accelerate some of the initiatives that we already started a few months or a few years ago. But that means that all our member states should see this question as a strategic investment and to address it in the national strategies for the Recovery and Resilience Facility, and to see how with the Digital Education Action Plan we can strengthen this.
Commissioner Gabriel, Prime Minister Bettel, thank you so much. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. I wish we could have done this over a glass of wine in Lisbon.
Too short.
It was too short. But we got to go back to Lisbon now. I promise you that glass of wine next time I see each of you. Thank you so much.
Muito obrigado. Adeu.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Xavier.